Good evening, good folks, and welcome to the City of Muskegon City Commission work session for this Monday, August 11th, 2025. We have one item, Regional Transit Authority, on our agenda, and a potential other item under any other business. But we're going to start off with Regional Transit Authority being reported out by our Deputy City Manager. Good evening.
Good evening. Oops, sorry. So, I am here to talk to you about the current status. As you all know, we've had a group of communities that have been meeting for a little while now with the county and MATS included in the county to talk about developing a regional transit authority. And as you may recall, back in October, you all approved the Articles of Incorporation so that we could join this authority. The City of Roosevelt Park also approved them. I can't recall if the City of Muskegon Heights got to the point of approving them or not. I feel like they did. Okay. So lastly, it was going to City of Norton Shores, and they did not take up the vote. So we've been meeting since then to talk about what our options are and were there things that we could do that would make Norton Shores more comfortable. And so we are at a place now where we are considering the idea of going forward with the authority by having fewer members. So the authority would likely not include the City of Norton Shores and potentially would also not include the City of Roosevelt Park. So we're looking for feedback from you on whether we should move forward with continuing to put together a regional transit authority, but with a smaller group. A couple of things that I want you to understand, even the communities that are considering opting out are still interested in having transit service. They're especially interested in having Go Bus service. And I probably shared this information with you in the past, but just as a reminder, the authority can contract with outside entities, including other communities. So if we put together the authority could still contract with those other cities. And there are other municipal entities that are also interested in contracting for various services, mostly Go Bus. And then another thing I want to make sure that you would understand is if whatever group of municipalities are included in the authority, it is very likely that we would want to include fixed route service that would serve outside the authority's boundary. And as you are all maybe painfully aware, that is because all the services that people need are not located within the City of Muskegon or the City of Muskegon and Muskegon Heights. We certainly provide a lot of services for people, but not everything that everybody needs. We are a region, and a lot of people who don't live in the City of Muskegon think that they do because of their mailing address, and having our county named the same thing adds to that confusion probably. But we are a community together, and I think the community does a good job of providing all the services that people in our region need, but they are somewhat scattered in some cases. So, any questions that you might have for me on that information?
Commissioners, any questions? Commissioner Cochin.
Yes. Thank you so much for your work on this. I have two main questions. I think they're kind of overarching. The first one is in regards to the Transit Authority. With our current system, will we see a expansion or a shrinkage in what we currently have if we go forward with the transit authority as noted tonight?
Well, what we've talked about all along is that once the authority was formed, and we got through all of the administrative pieces of that, including bylaws and all those things, we would take a look at the service that we're providing. One of the things, one of the reasons for going forward with an authority is that it gives us the power to put forth, to have taxing authority. So one of the goals would be that we would have a millage, and that would fund transit. In order to figure out what that millage rate would need to be, we would want to know what service needed to be provided. So, we've talked in the past about our current transit funding, and we don't have enough to meet all of the local match for federal funds that we could be bringing to the community, and so that would factor into what would we want our overall budget to be. So we could certainly take a look at what is being provided, but as far as the immediate future, it wouldn't change.
Okay.
That would be a decision that the authority would make.
And my next question is, do municipalities who are participating in the authority get, say, like a discount versus the municipalities who are choosing not to participate but contract with us?
That hasn't been carved in stone, but that has been our conversation, that that the members would certainly get a different rate than the contracted service. So the contracted service would be more expensive. We haven't talked about exactly how much more expensive. Okay. Just that concept. And you're probably all aware of these lovely gentlemen that are sitting here from the county that can probably answer these questions better than I can. But they are here to help if and when we need them.
Thank you. Commissioner Kilgo.
Thank you. So kind of on the same lines as Commissioner Cochin's question, if Norton Shores and Roosevelt Park choose not to participate, it would be Muskegon, Muskegon Heights, and Fruitport, or just Muskegon and Muskegon Heights?
Just Muskegon and Muskegon Heights.
So-
The entire time I have been involved, we have been unable to get Fruitport to come to the table.
Okay. So if we establish an authority with just Muskegon and Muskegon Heights, then the millage would just be on citizens of the cities, Muskegon and Muskegon Heights?
That is my understanding, yes.
Gotcha. So, like, I'm not here to, they have their own, authorities. They have their own elected officials in different municipalities, so they'll choose to go the routes that they choose to go. I just don't see it fair to citizens. Citizens in general don't love millages. Sometimes people don't understand what they're getting for a certain millage. But I also don't think that it's fair for just citizens of the city of Muskegon and Muskegon Heights, who already have the two highest millage rates in the county, to have just the millage put on them, when we know for a fact transit's going to go out to Fruitport, it's going to go out to Norton Shores, it's going to go to the township, past Roosevelt Park. And so who's to say that if the other municipalities they pay in to say, well, yeah, we know the bus or the transit comes out this way, so they pay, and then a year later they're like, no, we don't want to pay anymore. There's nothing really locking them into the authority if they're not already in it from the start. And would the burden solely millage-wise just be on the cities?
Well, my understanding is that the authority wouldn't be able to tax beyond their jurisdiction. And I know that we've talked a fair amount about using a millage to fund transit. It's not the only way to fund it. We could continue forward with what we have been doing, where each of the municipalities uses their city funds to pay into the service. So that is an option. So it would be up to us to figure that out.
Gotcha. And then my last question would be if the authority was not funded by millages and we chose to say it's X amount of dollars per municipality, could those other municipalities join the authority if it was funded a different way other than, do they know that they could join the authority in a way that doesn't necessarily have to be a millage increase?
They do.
Okay, thank you.
Well, the people that have been coming to the Regional Transit Authority meetings do. I'm not sure if all of their board members understand that.
And is it staff or is it elected officials that are coming to these meetings?
Staff,
Thank you.
welcome. There, at one meeting that I attended, the mayor of Muskegon Heights came because they don't currently have a city manager.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Hugo. Vice Mayor, anything to ask or add at this time?
So it feels untenable to me for the city of Muskegon and the city of Muskegon Heights, who have among the highest poverty rates, to carry the whole county. So I feel like that's a non-starter. What happens if we let this die?
Well, I mean, we can certainly continue on with the status quo. I'm not completely clear on the feelings of the county commissioners on continuing forward the way that it has been. That is certainly something we've discussed in the group that has been meeting, that's a possibility of going forward. I think the county administrator probably could speak to that a lot more clearly than I could. But, yeah, I understand what you're saying. There are a number of different ways that we can approach this. Going forward with the authority with Muskegon and Muskegon Heights, there certainly would be routes that would need to go into other jurisdictions. And I don't know that they would be dramatically different from what we currently have. I'm not an expert in the transit map, but I don't think that there are a lot of routes that go deep into Norton Shores, or the township, or Roosevelt Park. And again, the person who manages MATS can speak more clearly on that. So, it's really a way to service the people that live here that need transit. And like I said, there are different options that we have. But, this transit is a service that is needed by our community.
Do we have rider data? Do we know who is riding the bus and
do.
where they're going?
Yep. Not me personally, but Jim Coons does.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and he did a sampling for us for a certain amount of time that we reviewed in one of the meetings, and there are definitely fewer Norton Shores residents that are getting on the bus and getting off the bus, fewer than in our city and in Muskegon Heights.
I would be curious about the economic impact of Muskegon riders going outside of the community to do the vast majority of their shopping, because we know we are underserviced by grocery stores and other amenities. I would be curious about the economic impact with that.
Right, and we've had those conversations as well. And there are options where we can contract with some of the larger commercial properties to help with funding for transit to get our citizens to their locations. That is certainly an option that we can pursue.
Thank you, Vice Mayor St. Clair. Before I go to you, Commissioner Cochin, for a follow-up, Mr. Eisenbarth or Mr. Coons, do you have anything that you wish to add to the conversation and the questions that have been asked thus far?
Good evening. Yes, I can add some of that. Thanks, Leanne.
And kindly introduce yourself, sir.
Mark Eisenworth, County Administrator. Thank you. And again, you guys approved this back in 2024. Appreciate that, and we feel obligated to come back to you since things have changed, right? So, as far as the City of Roosevelt Park, I think Leanne explained it. They may or may not now, since Norton Shores informed us not. They're interested at this time. So, to answer your question, Commissioner St. Clair, what's next, right? Well, we feel like should come here and discuss this with you. If you move forward with it, obviously we'd work with you to help get that established, work with your corporate counsel to get that established. And then the routes, as they do, like you said, go to the grocery stores, how does that play into it? And the authority then at that point has the option to change routes. Of course, they'd have to do public hearings and go through that process, but that's definitely an option. If you decide not to go forward with this, I'll take it back to our board and discuss our current status, where we are now. Do we continue that? What other options are there for us to make this sustainable long-term? So there are options that we could lay out in front of the board, but our board has not talked about any others. They wanted us to come back and have this discussion with you and see where this board wants to go as one of the key partnerships in this. So a lot of work to be worked out to answer your question if it doesn't go forward. So there's things there that we can consider. But as far as, I guess, moving forward, the Heights obviously doesn't have a city manager. The mayor's been there a few times. We work with the two there. We'll take it back to the city of Muskegon and making sure the city of Muskegon Heights, making sure that they're understand it's only two. I think the last time they had a discussion, it was still at 3.
We're still at 3.
Yeah. Officially. Yeah. Officially, yeah, right. So we have to go through those processes as well. But since you're the one of the larger writers, we need to discuss this with you. Yes.
Yes, Mr.
Sorry.
I want to put some additional context in. Mark, correct me if I'm wrong on this one or not, but the way that Roosevelt Park currently has their structured, and which would kind of go into their calculation, is their DDA is actually the one who pays for their membership in mats, because the majority, well, the bus route that is along the side of Roosevelt Park down Henry Street services a number of their businesses within the DDA. So they don't actually pay for it through their general fund, it's through a special fund. So they would still continue to have that option if that was to move forward, but like the administrator was saying, we're not quite sure where things are going to land. So,
and that's a good point. Assuming the authority doesn't move forward, we'll be sending out new contracts, at least put in place with each municipality, and each municipality still wants to participate, at least in the current system. It's the authority that has caused some uncertainty. So after you guys make a decision which way, after this board makes a decision which way they go, we will be sending out new contracts at least for the next 5 years, maybe 3, just to continue working with each municipality. Do you guys think with that?
Thank you. Jim Coons, Muskegon Area Transit System. Leanne did a good job of summarizing, and of course, Mark, on behalf of the county, can speak for the board. What I just want to reiterate, though, is we're not, I don't think we're in a bad place necessarily. When we did the study of potential ways to go forward, the consultant had identified, the county could continue doing it. You could do a countywide authority. You could do a 4, 5, 6 community authority. You could even do a 1 community authority. The point of it is it becomes a governance change to where there's a different group making decisions about transportation or public transportation in the community. That group, if this is formed with 3 cities or potentially 2, it transitions the decision making to that authority board. I think one of the difficulties we have here is we have a couple of primary types of transportation. We have the routes, which everybody thinks of when they think of buses. And then we have the microtransit or on-demand services. And there's just a difference between what some communities want. And one community that has less route need doesn't want to be tied at the hip to a potentially large millage that would have to be the same across the entire district. So by creating an authority, if you do create an authority, one of the options is to give it taxing power. But it has to be the same tax across the entire district. And I think that's where some of this has come into a question of participation in a potentially larger or a potential tax that would have to be levied across the entire district. Other models, as were indicated, would potentially not do it not give the authority that power, but perhaps have each community bring a certain amount through other means. Roosevelt Park, as your manager indicated, does use some other sources, and they could continue to do that. And then, of course, contracts outside of the district. So the governing coalition that forms this authority does not necessarily have to be the service area or constrict the service types that the authority provides. It's just that authority making decisions for contracts and for rather than the county doing that. And I've been with the county for 26 years. I'm not saying one way is better than the other, but we haven't progressed to a larger, more robust transit system under a county-wide structure.
Thank you, Mr. Coons, and thank you, Mr. Eisenbarth. Before I go to follow up to Commissioner Cochin, I'll go to follow up Commissioner Cochin, and then I will share my thoughts on this, and then we'll continue in discussion. And Commissioner Kigo, I see, has a follow up as well. Commissioner Cochin.
Yes, thank you. You had mentioned that we could possibly contract with large businesses if we go forward with the authority. Do we have the ability to do that if we do not go forward with the authority?
I would imagine that Matt's could contract with them.
They could, okay. And have we looked at the range? Because I remember in a previous meeting we had mentioned a requirement, I think from the state, saying that we had to keep routes that were 3 miles out from the lines. Do we know if Myers and Walmart there on Henry are within that range?
I'm not sure what you're referencing.
I couldn't remember the term for it, unfortunately.
Maybe
Yeah,
to
the only requirement to provide services beyond the route network that you choose is.
Could you come to the microphone, please,
better
sir?
hear the mic.
Thank you.
The requirement that you're probably remembering is that when we have a bus route, we have to provide service for persons with disabilities within 3/4 of a mile surrounding that route. So that's the only requirement that we would have per se to go beyond the route network that's established.
Okay, all right, thank you. And then the next question was, will the authority be a net increase for the municipalities as far as their tax burden goes if we go ahead with this?
Yes, it would, because there is no current millage for it. Right, because right now we pay out of our general fund. Other communities do it differently, as was mentioned, but we pay out of our general fund.
Okay. And you had mentioned the taxing model, and you're saying that everything needed to be equal across the board. I find it interesting that probably the 2 cities that have the least amount coming in are going forward with this, and then the other ones are not. So I just wanted to point that out, that I thought that was very interesting.
Sure. One other point I want to make that I made to all of you in the past when talking about the authority, and I just want to bring it up as a reminder. Right now, we pay into this transit system, and we have no authority over the decision making. So it was one of the reasons for looking at this model is now the communities, have a say in what's happening with the service. And it's not that our county doesn't listen to us if we have suggestions and things. It's just that we don't even have really a formal contract. So at least something that is coming out of this process is What I think Mark and Jim were both referencing is that we'll end up with some sort of a contract with the county for the service that's being provided.
Thank you. Commissioner Kyogo.
Thank you. So from what you just touched on, so currently we have no authority to, well, we can give input, but we don't have any authority to hours of operation or days of operation.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
A couple questions. First question, Norton Shores Industrial Park, is it currently serviced by MATS?
The City of Norton Shores has microtransit across the whole city, as do the other three. As far as routes, it travels on Ponaluna from Grand Haven Road, from Harvey to Grand Haven Road, and then up to Norton Industrial Center Drive. So the,
Front of it.
yeah, but it
Beginning of
hits a piece of Norton Industrial Park, but it doesn't cover everything.
Okay. The second question, does the township participate in the current system or pay into the current system?
Brookport Township does not.
No.
Muskegon Township has an agreement from, I would say probably close to 15 years ago with an apartment complex. And that apartment complex pays a portion, pays Muskegon Township, pays for Muskegon Township. They do not pay the same amount as everybody else.
Okay. And I guess this is kind of a silly question because this is probably what you've been doing for the last few years, Leanne, but and staff. But is there a way to entice the other municipalities to use the services or join the authority without stepping on toes? Because like I said, I understand as an elected official, someone from across the state could say, Muskegon's not doing it the way that I would do it. And because I'm not in those municipalities or those meetings for the most part, I don't necessarily know their line of thinking. But if we created an authority, is there a way to say, hey, neighbor, if you join, these could be the benefits to your community?
We certainly have had those conversations, and as of late, I get the feeling that at least one of the communities would really like somebody else to start this so they can see how it works.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Kyogo. Thank you for presenting and updating us on where things stand with this. It's been a long haul in trying to advance this and make it happen. I remember when it first came about, this was several years ago now. I was on the West Michigan Shoreline Regional Development Commission board, and the MPO was considering this, and it was the reason why the MPO in Whimsdick was considering it was how can we better partner with Harbor Transit in northern Ottawa and potentially even merge, with them at some point in the future. And so out of that conversation, there was the study that was done that showed in order to improve partnership with them and potentially even merge, have a regional transit authority, it was important for us to transition to this standalone transit authority of our own to mirror their management of Harbor Transit. And then that also would allow us to go inside Ottawa County, then come in Muskegon County, and then so there's opportunities for more partnership. So that was one impetus for us going down this road. The other impetus, as I understand it, was the political dynamic of the county board back then. That there were several members of the county board that did not think that the county should be responsible for public transit, and they just wanted to dissolve it or set it aside and let others be responsible for that. Those members that were most vocal about that are no longer on the county board. So I think that the dynamics have changed. The political dynamics have changed on the county board, and we have a new board. They're in their first year. There's 4 years in their terms now. And so I think it's merits having a conversation with the existing county board about their appetite for moving this forward or retaining what we have, and look at, can we improve what we have or just continue what we have. We as a city and this commission supported moving this forward because we want partnership. We want partnership with our neighboring municipalities. We want to be able to support regional transportation options and partnering, with Harbor Transit eventually. And as I understand it, there still is opportunity to partner with Harbor Transit with our existing model. The only difference is we wouldn't be able to go into Ottawa County, but Harbor Transit, because they are a standalone authority, could come into Muskegon County. So there might be opportunity for still a transfer point and partnership in that capacity.
I think that's already happening.
So that is already happening then. Okay. So it's just not us being able to go into Ottawa County then. But that partnership and that link up is already happening, which I'm happy to hear. You can tell it's not just public transit down to North Ottawa. So I'm of the mind, particularly hearing that, maybe just down to the city of Muskegon, Muskegon Heights, to move forward any kind of standalone authority, I'm of the mind to not continue pursuing the transit authority at this time. It seems like we're spinning wheels, and I appreciate all the work that's gone into this. There's been a lot of discussions, a lot of movements, votes have happened. We've supported it, moved it forward. But we can't force the unwilling to participate. And I don't necessarily want to upend the entire model and our how we're serving our community right now just to be a proof of concept for a neighboring municipality that may or may not want to join, down the road. We have a system that works right now. Some people want improvements and want to see things differently done, and that can still be addressed within the existing framework. I think it'd be even more challenging to try to make those improvements if you have a transit authority of just the Heights, Muskegon Heights, and the city of Muskegon. And so I'm of the mind of maintaining the Muskegon area transit system that we have now. Set this aside. If there's an opportunity in the future that it makes sense to revisit this and re-engage our municipalities in Muskegon County, then you've already laid done that groundwork, and it could be picked back up, and we could revisit it, and we could, move that forward. But I think right now we're kind of just spinning wheels and not being very productive, and I think we could use the time and energies of our staff and Muskegon County staff could be used more productively in service to our community. So those are my thoughts, commissioners. Commissioner Cochin.
I would echo that sentiment, unfortunately. I know how hard that you guys have all worked on this, and I believe in this, and I think a lot of us believe in it. But I think when we're hearing from folks, we are getting taxed to death, quote unquote. I don't think that us doing this solely with Muskegon Heights is going to be the answer to fixing it, unfortunately. If we had maybe even one more, that would give me a little bit more hope to continue going forward. But I have some major concerns about just the two of us trying to do that. When I think about, where do I go in a day? If my car broke, where would I need to go in a day? And unfortunately, besides City Hall, a lot of it is in Roosevelt Park, because I live across the street. Norton Shores, because that's where Myers is, So I think that a lot of people need to get to those places, and without a guarantee that we can allow people to get to those places by bus, I wouldn't want to take that on at this time. If it means that things aren't going to change too drastically, but I would definitely be willing to talk about it in the future.
Yeah, I do want to clarify that if Norton Shores or Roosevelt Park did not join the authority, the bus routes would still go to those places. We just wouldn't get tax dollars from them.
Okay.
Commissioner Kilgo.
I just want to let you know, Mr. Mayor, I'm on the same track of thinking as you are at this time. And to the point that you just made is one of the reasons why. So if we're still going to service And it's only fair to service not only grocery, but there are employers in our neighboring municipalities whose employees live in the Heights or in the city, and they need to get out to those places as well. So I want them to still be able to continue to be able to get people from these cities to our neighbors for their needs and be able to get back home. But for the city of Muskegon and our neighbor in the Heights to be the only ones having to up the taxes on our residents, I don't think that that's fair at this time.
Thank Commissioner
Thank
Hagel.
you.
Anything to ask or add, Vice Mayor St. Clair?
I would just agree with everything that has been said. I think the city of Muskegon offers a lot of amenities to the community already. We are the provider of the downtown, among many, many other things that we foot the bill for quite happily. I think that this was an opportunity for our neighbors to come together and help us build something incredible, and I think the opportunity will remain on the table. And if they choose to engage with us, I think all of us would happily jump right back in. But we can't carry this too. That doesn't make any sense.
Thank you, Vice Mayor St. Clair. Is there anything else that you wish to ask of us, or have you gotten the input that you're looking for?
No, unless either of you have anything else?
Yes, Mr. Eisenbach.
If I may finish here, no, thank you for your comments. I'll take those back to our board. I agree with you. I thought we had a good plan to go forward with it, but I think we'll come up with a better plan. And I look forward to working with this board and making things better for our residents. We're in this all together, and we'll come up with a good plan to make it work. So appreciate it, your feedback.
Excellent. Thank you. I appreciate your partnership. All right. So that's our only item there. I do want to touch base on another item. It was an item that I had hoped and was planning to bring to our Legislative Policy Committee meeting next Wednesday for discussion amongst the commission and to see if there's appetite for moving this forward. It's a ballot question. It's an advisory ballot question. And talking with the city clerk, though, I learned that tomorrow is the deadline. 5 p.m. tomorrow is the deadline. 4 p.m. tomorrow is the deadline for submitting a approved ballot language to be added to the ballot in November. So, and I conferred with our city manager on this, and he conferred with legal counsel. Some draft language was put together quickly but well. That had been shared with each of our commissioners earlier today, one of the drafts of it. There's been a little fine tuning since then. I really wish we had more time to review this and not be forced to potentially decide tonight on this and vote on this. This, for everyone at home, know what we're talking about here. It was an advisory question pertaining to approval or disapproval of the city's engagement with MartDoc on a potential redevelopment of the campground at Fisherman's Landing, and all the other parts involved with that. Moving port and ship operations, expanding public access, creating new waterfront parks, and the like. There's a lot of moving pieces to it, which adds to the complexity of trying to put forward a well-crafted, clear, and understandable advisory question on the ballot. I appreciate the efforts of staff and legal counsel in trying to craft something. I feel like we're almost there, but I'm not. I don't think it serves us well, this community well, to try to wordsmith a ballot question right now. The reason why I'm bringing it up still, and it's at the pleasure of the commission. The reason why I'm bringing it up still is because this was shared with the commission and engaged with the commission to get the commission's initial reaction to this question. Unfortunately, we're missing 3 members of our commission, which also makes me leery of the 4 of us deciding this alone to move this forward and put it on the ballot, and the various implications of that, particularly if we don't have as well refined and clear of an advisory question as I think would be necessary to serve us and to serve our community. So I'm hesitant to move forward with this ballot question, but I want to move forward with it. I do. That's why I was going to bring it to the LPC meeting for us to review and discuss it, give more careful and conscientious thought to the wording and how it's presented to our community, and inviting our community to weigh in on this question, and also make sure they understood that this is an advisory question. It's not a binding vote. It was us asking them to weigh in. Do they approve? Do they disapprove on this? Knowing that the commission ultimately would be responsible for deciding if it were to move forward or not move forward, and the particular parameters and details of that agreement. Approving an agreement with details. We're not working on the details. That's staff and legal counsel. But we'd be approving the agreement and all that entails. So I'm bringing this up to acknowledge this conversation, acknowledge what we were thinking, and to ask the commission your thoughts on this question tonight. Commissioner Kilgo?
Yes, thank you. So I never think it's a bad thing to ask the public. Obviously, if we put it into an election where it's an advisory question and everyone who goes out and votes in November could see the question, I don't think that's a bad thing. I understand that our full commission isn't here tonight, so it would take unanimous vote from us because there's only 4 of us here. But if everyone was here, it would still take 4 votes. So I think that you would still need 4 votes either way. I'm not opposed to the language that I saw. I would like official language, but we're in the 12th hour also. So I kind of understand. I don't necessarily know that the optics are right. So what I believe that we can do is put something on a commission meeting or a work session, and just like any other commission meeting, the public can come. Now, maybe we fill the chambers and we have to sit and listen to the public for 3 minutes apiece, but I'm okay with that. Mm-hmm. So if this would have been able to be in front of us a little bit earlier, either at a commission meeting or a previous work session, with time for us to really look at it, dig into it, I would feel a little bit more comfortable with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Kilgo. Commissioner Koshin or Vice Commissioner Koshin?
I thought she was going to say something. So I definitely understand the hesitation with the last minute addition and ask. But in my mind, it's not that. In my mind, it is us listening to the citizens. I have heard time and time again from several citizens that they want to be heard, and that they're not feeling heard, and that this would be a great way to show that we are listening to them. I think that other commissioners on here have voiced that opinion as well, and as Commissioner Kilgo noted, we would need 4 votes either way, and I would be supportive of that, to get that information from our citizens.
Thank you, Commissioner Kochin. Vice Mayor St. Clair?
So I think that we can go wrong or right a lot of ways here. I have a little bit of concern with the 4 o'clock tomorrow deadline, but that's not negotiable. So either we do this tonight or we don't. I am less concerned about making sure that the language is exactly perfect. And I understand the value of that, but I also understand the risk of letting the perfect be the enemy of the good. And that's part of the reason why I'm not an attorney. I also understand that I am not an attorney nor a city manager, and I'm comfortable with being told I'm wrong regularly. So if this is one of those cases, tell me now. I think that there's a lot of value in gaining insight from the community as to how they feel about this. One of the things that I mentioned in conversation earlier was that there's a risk of setting a precedent with this. And I respect and acknowledge that, but I think that this is a somewhat unprecedented situation in that somebody can correct me if I have the timeline wrong, but as far as I can remember, we have been having some iteration of this conversation about Fisherman's Landing and Mart Dock for something like 10 years. Is that a reasonable?
Or like 13 years at least.
At least 10 years, a long time, right? Like,
2012 is when they were talking
Yeah.
about potentially moving the campground to
yeah, so
the Sand Docks property.
10 to 15 years probably, off and on. You know, I know the Imagine Muskegon Lake plan was, when did that come out?
2015, 2016.
So at least since 2015 or 2016. So this isn't a new conversation, and we've gotten, I feel like, close to a resolution with this, and I don't feel like at any time we've had a really clear picture of what the community's thoughts are on this. And I think that that's not surprising because the picture's changed a lot in that time. You know, it has evolved in a lot of ways, and I feel differently about this than I did when it first got on my radar, probably 8 years ago, because the deal is different. I think that making sure that we are emphasizing that it is an advisory vote and that it is an opportunity for people to voice their thoughts on this, but it's not binding. Provides some cover, but also gives us an opportunity to really get a clear picture of what the community thinks. I think I know what people want, but I often think I know what people want, and I'm not always right. So, you know, all that to be said, I definitely see the value in moving this forward, even though it is very short notice. It would give us, you know, basically a 3-month runway to let the community understand what we're looking to gain from it. You know, would it be better if we had a month to wordsmith the language? Maybe. But I think that what we have seen is pretty digestible and pretty understandable, and I think our constituents are fairly smart. So I can go either way, but I can see myself supporting it.
All right, thank you, Vice Mayor St. Clair. So that everyone else has the same information of what's being considered and updated, one, because this has been slightly refined. This has been slightly refined and further refined on the dais as well. And so I'm going to read this, what has, this should look familiar, it's just slightly refined and tweaked since previous versions you all have seen. So I'm going to read this and then invite the city manager to weigh in on the question. Do you approve or disapprove of the City of Muskegon proposal, subject to commission approval, to acquire and convert no less than 900 feet of the Mart Dock into publicly accessible waterfront, permanently close the Fisherman's Landing gated campground, if grants obtained, relocate Mart Dock port functions to Fisherman's Landing, and acquire/develop property to the north of Fisherman's Landing into a 25-acre waterfront public park, and to acquire/integrate 32 acres with Fisherman's Landing port function. That's the question. And then an additional info is that public access to boat ramps, fishing areas, and parking at Fisherman's Landing remain. Public access to Muskegon Lake would increase from 2,380 feet to 4,900 feet. And so that's the draft language. And people would be tasked, would you see yes and no, or would you see it approve and disapprove as
It'd be
options?
It'd be yes and no.
Okay, so we'd have to
so the-
rephrase it, just do you
to
approve?
go wordsmithing at the dais that I hate. It would probably have to be, do you approve?
Do you
of this?
approve and be a
Because
yes
the
or no?
questions are yes and no.
Okay. So that's the draft language as it stands right now.
Unless Ann disagrees with me, but that's my understanding.
That's correct.
Okay.
Only yes and no
Yes.
questions.
Yes.
So, Mr. Manager, care to weigh in on your thoughts on this?
Yeah. So, as I've consistently said to all the commissioners that I've had the opportunity to talk with about this in the past couple of days, I have three major reservations. One, this is a complex issue that we're still fine-tuning the details on a little bit that is, in my opinion, hard to put into 100 words on a ballot. Two, depending on the vote, if it's in favor, for example, it could box city staff in a little bit on the negotiations. And then the third is, and this is the one that is paramount to me as the city administrator, is I'm concerned about the precedents that this sets moving forward when we have tough decisions before the council. The idea of putting advisory votes on the ballot, it's not something that's done often. It is not common. There's been court opinions about, or AG's opinions, I believe, Counselor.
Court.
That have been looked at on advisory votes. Slightly different situation than what we have here. And it's non-binding. So, there's just kind of this gray area, but I don't want us to kind of swing into a lane where when we have tough situations, we're asking for advisory votes, because that impacts timelines, that hamstring staff and the commission on an ability to be more nimble going forward. And so looking at how me as your administrator would advise you on that, that's what I'm concerned about. Ultimately, city staff serves at the pleasure of the commission, and we will do what the commission wishes us to do. But I need to make sure that I'm giving you advice on where I see some potential problems down the road if this was to be a path that we continue down. Not saying that that would absolutely be the case, but it's something that we need to make sure that we're considering.
Thank you, Mr. Manager, for those insights. Vice Mayor St. Clair.
I have a question for the manager. You voiced some concern that you could get boxed in on negotiations. It might be wishful thinking on my part, but my understanding is you are likely to have finished negotiations before the ballot
So
amendment would happen.
ideally, ideally, I have let Mart Doc know that this advisory vote is a possibility, and expressed my desire that we would continue to work down the road to have an agreement prior to the vote happening, and ideally a work session where we would present, this is the agreement that might help inform it a little bit more as well. That is ideal. Now, there is a possibility that the other side of the table in this instance could say, since we're waiting on this vote, we're going to kind of put things on hold. And that's a possibility as well, because this has been moving so quickly in the past couple of days. We haven't had a chance to really sit down and talk about this aspect of it, how it would relate to things. I can let you know that the concerns that I've had even since last week's one-on-ones with a number of commissioners about ambiguity in some of the language has started to solidify a bit more to a direction that we would be more comfortable bringing it to the commission with the specific item related the transition off of off of Mart Dock to Fisherman's Landing and timelines. We kind of moved around on that a little bit, and we think we found a mechanism that would allow us to have measurable, definitive goalposts as we move forward if this was to be approved, if the agreement was to be approved. So that has changed just in the past couple of days. And actually today was some significant progress on that by our attorney. So just, as an FYI. So I don't know if that work then starts to stop, which is a possibility, or it could continue.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. I think ideally, if we were to move forward with the ballot question, in a best case scenario, we would have that proposed agreement with all of the language and all of the details that could be presented to the community by October, if not, sooner, but, certainly by the beginning of October, so that our community can dig into that, review that, and then weigh in, at the ballot box in terms of whether they approve or disapprove. That would be the best case scenario, in my opinion. And I understand our manager's concern about setting a precedent, and the Vice Mayor spoke to this a bit as well, as to why she's not so concerned about it setting a precedent, that this is a unique situation. And I'd be inclined to agree. I don't think we need to go to... we are a representative democracy. We're not a direct democracy. We are tapped and elected to make these difficult decisions on behalf of our community and in what's in the best interest of our community. And we're each going to approach that differently in terms of how we do our decision making, and what we consider to be representative of our community and in service to their interests. And so given the long history with this question, the many different parts of this question, I wasn't of the mind that it'd be helpful to give our community the opportunity to weigh in an advisory capacity, to try to also distinguish between the folks that are residents of the city of Muskegon, because it's the residents who are the owners of this property. I've heard a lot from people who don't live in the city of Muskegon. That's predominantly who I've heard from on this question. And that's why I think it would be helpful to have that question be answered by our residents, who are the owners of Fisherman's Landing Campground. They're owners of every asset we have. So that's part of my rationale is to thinking why it would be good to have that advisory question in the first place. I just didn't anticipate us needing to have this answered, or us deciding on whether or not to have the question and how that question would be phrased, by 4:00 tomorrow. We might have a little bit more time. I'd hoped to bring it to the LPC meeting next week for this conversation, that it could then be put on our general session, the following week, for a formal vote. But we don't have that luxury, unfortunately. And so it's for us to decide how to proceed. And I see your hand up. I actually saw Commissioner Kilgo's hand up first, so we go to Commissioner Kilgo, then Commissioner Cochin.
Yeah, I have a point of information. I need just a little clarity for council. Because this was an announced meeting, it's an official meeting called to order by the mayor. We can vote on an item at our work sessions.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Excuse me. Yes.
And then my second question, one of us would have to make a motion and second, and then you would need a unanimous vote to pass.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Kilgo. Commissioner Cochin.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Manager, for bringing up that aspect of the boxing in. I know that this has been a long and arduous process, and I think the tenacity of the group who has been working for this project for what Vice Mayor St. Clair said was like 13 years, I think shows us that they can wait a little bit longer. And I could see us getting in a situation where we would lose the ability to negotiate, especially since there are things that I feel that were previously not in our citizens' best interest. So I'm on the fence.
And I wanted to weigh in too on something that Commissioner Kilgo raised earlier, which is in terms of hearing from our community, engaging with the community. Because even if we don't have a ballot question, an advisory question on the ballot, we still have opportunity, both individually and collectively, to engage our community, inform our community, hear from our community. We can set up special events and engagements here at City Hall or elsewhere in the community. We can utilize our various different digital channels to inform and have online surveys, perhaps welcome input. But I think what's most important is getting the formal agreement so we can see, because none of us on this on the commission have seen anything formally presented, any draft agreements for us to consider. And I think that's what our community is yearning for, is some concrete, not just concepts, not just pictures, but something concrete being put forward for us to consider and for our community to consider, so that we can get into those conversations about, is this reasonable and is this beneficial and is this going to create the greatest value, for our community. And we're each going to answer that question differently too. Like, as we approach this, and this is how I was going to approach the advisory question, just like I'm going to approach it with my commissioners, or our commissioners, and I've shared this with some of you, that if this were on the ballot, I was not going to be lobbying one way or another. I'm going to tell you how I feel, but that this is going to be up to each person on the commission and in our community to weigh the pros and cons. And each of us are going to have different lens in which we're viewing it, and we're going to have a different set of values in which we analyze it. And if we all have the same information, accurate information, then I don't think we should be begrudging any member of our community or any member of this commission for how they vote and what their ultimate outcome is. It's important that we all have accurate information, and then we're going to put it through our own decision-making rubric to decide if we're a yay or if we're a nay. And as you know, I've been open to the overarching concept and support of the overarching concept, but details matter. And if you know me, I'm going to pay attention to those details. That's why I tell people that I cannot tell you definitively how I'm going to vote on this if and when it comes to the city commission, because details matter. And so I think we still have opportunities to engage and inform and solicit feedback from our community, even without putting a ballot question, an advisory question on the ballot. I would have liked to have done that, but I'm not comfortable at this as Commissioner Kilgo said, 12th hour, which is ironic because I'm the one that asked about this and brought it forward and said, hey, something to be considered, because I was hopeful maybe we could get this done, and we all feel comfortable and confident in it. But the hastiness is leaving me a little uneasy and not hearing from the other three members of our commission. Even if they were to vote no, I still wanted them to weigh in on this question. It's correct to state that it just takes 4, and so even if we were all 7 here and the other 3 members opposed it, the 4 of us could still approve it. But I still would have liked them an opportunity to weigh in on this question publicly and whether to put it on the ballot. So that's an additional reason to give me pause about moving this forward right here. Now the question might be asked, well, why don't you put it on the ballot at the next election, which the next earliest opportunity for the election would be May. And I will say that I'm opposed to that, and the reason why is because that's going to bump up against a critical deadline for pursuing port infrastructure development grants. And so if this is something we're going to be moving forward as a city and as a community, it's going to need to happen sooner than that. We can't just wait until May of next year. So those are my thoughts. As the manager said, it's the commission's directive on how we proceed. Vice Mayor St. Clair.
So one of the things that the manager referenced was that there's a risk in, I'm going to paraphrase, passing the buck on the hard votes. And that might not have been his exact intent, but that's how I filtered it. And I just want to say out loud that I don't see the Fisherman's Landing Mart Dock issue as a hard vote. I see it as a complicated situation, and much like the mayor said, I don't know how I will vote yet because I have not seen the details, and the devil is in the details. So I'm concerned with the idea of framing this as a hard vote because I think that sets us up to fight. And I don't know that this is a fight. It could be a very easy decision once we see what's on paper. I think there are many decisions that as a commission we are called to make that are hard votes. I'm not sure that this is one. So I do think that this is one that the community has a lot of feelings about, though. And some of the issues that I think are really hard, people don't care about at all. So, I think I guess it's a values judgment, right? What's hard to you is not what's hard to me. And I think, again, I'm comfortable going either way. I don't have as much concern about how short our runway is on this because I'm trusting our experts. So, but if our experts think that they cannot fly the plane, then I will worry about how short the runway is, So I guess I am happy being guided on this. So.
Thank you, Vice Mayor St. Clair. Commissioner Kilgo.
Yes. I also would like us to have a official proposal, purchase agreement, official deal in place for us to look at it. Have an open meeting, hear from the public, us vote on it. I have no problem with that. So I won't be supporting tonight us with the ballot initiative. The advisory question this evening. So to save us some time, I have no problem putting forward that it's kind of late in the game for us to do this. So I'm not going to vote yes either way this evening for that. We can continue to negotiate with the different parties and bring it in front of us. And if it's brought in front of us, we'll, like you said, we'll all look at it with the eyes that we have and make a decision at that time.
Thank you, Commissioner Kilgo. All right. We don't have a motion on the table. Hearing that from Commissioner Kilgo, if there were a motion on the table in favor of moving this forward, it would not pass. So unless there's any final thoughts or questions to ask before we proceed, Commissioner Kocha.
Yes, I just have a point of information. If we had voted on this and it had gone forward, and say the developer did not have a plan to bring before the commission and to show the people, would it have to stay on the ballot then?
Yes.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Okay.
It would still be on the ballot.
And
yeah.
there I have some concerns because it could change, and I don't love that. I was very much so for the idea before, whole hog, until Jonathan said that. And then I was like, oh, wait a second, I did not think about that. And that's one of those things with last minute stuff, but that's why we all get together and talk, because we all have different points of view, and hearing from different people can kind of change how you think about what you originally thought was. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. This is definitely multifaceted.
It is.
Mr. Manager.
Thank you for the discussion. It was good. I do want to apologize if I ineloquently stated one of my positions. So, but thank you for the good discussions.
Thank you. And before we adjourn, something I wish to emphasize for ourselves and to our community, that as we're evaluating this, and I already talked about, how we're going to approach this differently. We're going to have our different pros and cons, and we're going to weigh those pros and cons differently, and we're going to, come to some determination, and hopefully we all have the same accurate information. What I want to impart to the commission, to our community, is that we don't need to beat one another up over this, and we don't need to shame one another over this. That people are entitled to their opinions, and that our residents especially are owners of this property. They should be heard, they should be respected, and I just hope that we maintain throughout this as this agreement moves forward, and I fully expect something will come to the commission at some point, that I just ask that we all maintain some professionalism, civility amongst ourselves and with our community, and implore our community to do that as well, as we're evaluating this. So those are my final thoughts on this question, or on this topic. Thank you, commissioners. All right, we're going to go to public comment. I don't have any public comment forms, but I see a hand. Welcome, Mr. Jack Page, joining us from the Beechville Bluffton neighborhood. You have up to 3 minutes to provide your remarks.
Well, let me hand this out real quick to you guys. I'm going to give you a quick update on what I see happening with STRs down in Beechwood Bluff. Before we get to this, we've got a season of data underneath us. I know the STR were capped in Bluffton, but we're still expanding, and it looks like now that we have that the rider was put in that the one-time exemption, instead of an 8-year relief, we're going to see about 25 years of getting down to the time that's going to take to get under that. What this is particularly about is 1880 Walnut was given a permit from Safe Built for a 6-bedroom, 3-bathroom house renovation with nothing but on-street parking. First of all. Second of all, an exception was asked for by this property, and it was given by our city manager, and that's all fair and right up on board. But what my question is does Safe Built have to give a final inspection before an STR permit is given? And if that STR permit was been issued to this particular property, what was the date of that inspection? Because if you look on my pictures, August 4th, August 5th, and August 9th, they were occupied. So they were up and running, and their advertisement is on VBRO, and they're out there in the world. And if they had received their final inspection from Safe Built, then if you look at the next one on August 5th, a non-compliant hot tub is delivered, set down on the deck, which is not 4 feet anywhere away from the property line or 4 feet away from the house. And did that hot tub come in post-inspection? Because that's a strike, as far as what I see of the strike on the 3-strike rule against STRs. And the next picture is of the new owner's car as he was there. I didn't take a picture personally of him doing it because I think that would be against his privacy. But as he was then wiring in the hot tub himself and not going through a licensed electrician and everything. So to me, that would be strike 2 against an STR if they're full. So I guess first of all, are they fully permitted, and should they be operating on these 4th, 5th, and 9th dates? And if they were fully inspected and everything, what is the consequence of then dropping in these hot tubs and things non-compliant and after the fact by basically circumventing the Safe Built process and going behind? I think what they're trying to do is they're trying to operate up and up on some levels with you guys and then playing fast and loose with others. So that's what I see. As I said, now that we've got a season's worth of sale data going, it's instead of being an 8-year turnaround to get down to the acceptable levels, we're now looking at 26.
Thank you, Mr. Page.
Yep.
Appreciate you joining us this evening.
Thank you.
All right, I don't see anyone else in the audience wishing to give public comment at this time. We are going to go to the phones. That's 231-724-6721. Again, that phone number is 231-724-6721. Please turn down any audio in the background when you are calling in. State your name, and if you're a city resident, which neighborhood you're calling from, and if you're not a resident of the city of Muskegon, which other township, village, or city you may be calling from. Does not sound like we have any takers for phone-in comments.
I do have something.
Oh, you have something to
Yeah,
share?
I have something to share. Just, I do feel like we'll hear about this tomorrow, or at least I've seen online that we'll hear about it tomorrow. But just speaking towards everyone having conscious driving here in the city of Muskegon, we know even at our neighborhood association meeting that I was at earlier, one of our Muskegon officers were there and giving us some of the stats, but we've seen some tragedy recently. So I just want to bring awareness to everyone watching out for not only pedestrians, but motorcycles, and paying attention, driving sober, all of the things that as adults we should know, and it shouldn't have to be said, but it needs to be said. And like I said, I think we'll hear about it more from some of our citizens tomorrow, but I just wanted to bring light to that because it's been on my heart.
Absolutely. Thank you, Commissioner Kilgo. I do anticipate we'll be hearing more about it tomorrow. Like you was anticipating just bringing it up under any other business tomorrow and hearing from staff. Director Coles was not going to be able to join us tomorrow, but our city manager will be available to weigh in and address any questions on the subject. But to echo you, Commissioner Kilgo, yes, we all should need to be safe and courteous drivers. And we can, each of us, lead by example while encouraging others to do the same, because some folks are just reckless out there. It's wild. But we'll have this conversation further tomorrow, as well as a potential new tool that might be able to aid us in some of this work. But there's a cost associated with that.
Sweet.
As usual. So thank you again, Commissioner Kilgo. And there's nothing else, then I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Kilgo, supported by Vice Mayor St. Clair to adjourn. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, the same sign. The ayes have it. We are adjourned. Thank you. Take care and be well.